that thousands of students across the country actually know the content, but still fall short of achieving the grades that they deserve during the exams. Why? Because knowing the content alone is not enough. You can know the content, you can revise for hours, make beautifully presented notes, and still panic in exam hall, struggle to apply your knowledge, or lose marks on silly mistakes. But the students who jump 3 grades or more, and those who achieve grades 8s and 9s, they follow a simple, proven system. They follow a simple, proven roadmap that helps them stay calm, confident, and in control from day one right through to exam day. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video, and I'm going to jump in and share my slides. Okay. Okay, so let's jump into this simple 7-step process to achieve grade 9 in GCSE Maths and Science into your roadmap. The step 1 is assessment. So students need to assess themselves. So what I recommend is students assess themselves, and they assess themselves especially on the subjects that they are finding the most difficult. I recommend a quick 20 to 30 minutes quiz per those subjects that they're finding difficult. Every term or every half term is a good starting point. Why is assessment important? Well, it helps the child identify their weakness. And that means identifying which topics they are not doing very well at, which topics they're finding challenging, but also subtopics, right? So it could mean, oh, I'm not very good at hormones, but actually I kind of know some stuff about hormones, but it's particularly about the menstrual cycle or the contraceptive methods bit that I need to hone in on that I don't understand. So identifying weakness is really key. But it's not just the topics, it is also other things like, dealing with questions, for example. So for instance, is the child getting stuck on 6-mark exam paper questions, which is very common in science exams, that students get stuck with that? Or are they actually missing marks on the what they think it's an easy 1 or 2 mark questions, but they're forgetting to write those keywords, and so they literally losing marks on, simple 1 and 2 mark questions. So that's why assessment is really good, because it helps them to identify not only the weaknesses in terms of topics, but also what are other things that are holding them back from jumping that grade. Now, once they've assessed themselves, they can then plan what they are going to do to tackle this issue, to focus on the key things that they need to focus on. And so that's why it's no surprise that step 2 is to plan. So step 2 in that 7-step roadmap is to plan. And the way that I think of this and the way that I explain this to my parents is, imagine you're going on a long journey. Let's just say you're driving from London all the way up to Scotland. You have to plan. You have to make sure you have your spare tires, your fluids, you sorted out your brake fluids and so on and so forth, because you're inevitably going to come across challenges. Something's going to happen. You might need to stop. You're going to run out of petrol, and your tire's going to burst or whatever. But because you've planned, you can manage those challenges and continue smoothly without the stress. So that's the same thing to do with planning for our students. So in terms of planning, the first thing they need to know is know the content that they need to cover. They need to plan the content they need to cover. So that means being aware of the content, right? Not just kind of going to school and letting the teacher teach them, but taking that time out to go, what does my specification say that I need to cover? How much is that content? So if I, for instance, if you actually go and check the specification, for instance, for just combined science alone, not, the triple science, I think in the AQA, for instance, there's about 150 pages. So when you see that, you go, oh gosh, that's a lot of content. How can I plan for that, right? You need to think about how long you can cover that content. So what I tend to do, what I'll share with my students, it's if you look at the book, so for instance, take your maths book, and in the maths book, there might be about 15 topics. So now you're thinking, well, how long is it going to how long am I going to be able to cover this? And how much can I cover in a specific time? So if I have 15 topics and I have about 10 months to cover it, then, you know, I can do about 1.5 topics a month. So just having that plan really helps. So now what we do is we give our students a study plan, and the study plan helps them to figure out how many topics they need to cover roughly around, say, a month, for instance, and how detailed those topics are, because it helps you to, well, just by seeing just how much you need to do, then that helps you to take the right action. That helps you to go, oh, there's a lot. I need to make a start on this, or, oh, yeah, that's about okay. I think I'm doing okay. The second thing in terms of planning is that the child needs to be able to see a few steps ahead of them. So we've just talked earlier about planning way ahead, looking at the curriculum. That curriculum is the journey. But how about just a week ahead? So planning ahead, thinking about exactly what specific topic needs to be covered that week, right? So child needs to sit down and go, well, what specific topic am I going to cover that week? When am I going to cover that topic? Is it going to be on a Monday or Tuesday? Is it in the afternoon? Is it in the morning? Most importantly, how am I going to cover that topic for maximum benefit? What method am I going to use? Again, doing these for the subjects that they've identified the most help with, they would get more out of it rather than doing it for the subjects that they know or the subjects they're comfortable with. So at the Impact Academy, we give our students a weekly revision plan, and they have a lot of other templates as well. And what that helps with is it gives them a very quick way to identify the subjects that they need to focus on. So from the revision plan, they can kind of go and say, it has all of the topics that they need to know, and they can sort of identify, okay, these are the ones I need to focus on. These are the specific subjects, and these are the specific topics. But then we also help them in that revision planner with regards to how can I learn that topic, because the way you learn algebra in maths might be different from the way you learn covalent bonding in chemistry, right? So how can I learn the topics for maximum results? And then when combined with a timetable, when am I going to do this? And this helps them to do it across all subjects if they want to do it across all subjects. So why is the planning step important? The planning step is important because it's that saying, plan to fail to plan, plan to fail. Once you've planned, you're halfway there, right? And it eliminates or drastically increases motivation. So once you've planned, you have that motivation. It eliminates things like friction or procrastination or overwhelm because you are halfway there. And it also reduces stress and anxiety as well. So planning is a really, really key step. Is one of the biggest things I would say your child needs to do if they really want to jump 3 grades. But this is a big step that students miss. So you can see how planning comes earlier on in that roadmap, because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Step 3, I call that build. And that's because after the students have planned, they really need to have a solid foundation. They need to build their foundations. Foundations are normally the topics in year 9, year 10, depending on when your school starts GCSE. Why is it important to have a solid foundation in subjects like maths and science? Well, if you have a solid foundation, it means you will have a good grasp and understanding of the topics. But then when complex topics come up, you can now understand that a lot more, and you can easily connect the dots between the topics. But if your foundations are poor and you have more complex topics, more harder topics, you're just going through the book, you're just going through the motion. It's actually not making sense to you. So foundations are really, really super key. So it's important that your child do all they can to develop their foundations, whether that's homework. Don't skip homework. I'm pretty sure I saw research recently that says doing homework help you improve 1 grade So you can see I've already shown you one thing that your child can do to improve one grade, let alone all of the other stuff. Homework is key. That can be reading through their notes, ask for help from teachers, having extra tuition sessions. All of these can help to build their foundation. So anything your child can do to cover the basics and build a foundation really set them up for success. Now, onto step 4, which I call retain. And retain is all about effective revision. There's a few parts to this. The first part is thinking about how can I learn this information in the shortest amount of time? Because that is effective revision. It's not sitting there and spending hours revising, but how can I learn this key thing in a short term and have that go into my long-term memory? So for instance, one of the examples that I always use is adaptations in biology. There's so much information, content about adaptations around the biology curriculum. So you're never going to get away from not knowing it. So what I do is I teach my students one way that they can learn about adaptations that they can apply to all the other adaptation stuff, whether it's about the small intestine, whether it's about the lungs, whether it's about fish gills or even plant adaptations. And so once they know that, they do not need to learn everything separately. That saves so much time because there's a lot of similarities with them. So really thinking about how can I learn the information in the shortest amount of time? And also what specific method can I use? So that's part 2. The third part of retaining, this is another one that students skip a lot, is compiling revision notes as you go along. I would say at least from year 10, if you can, from year 9, great. But at least from year 10, a child to start compiling their revision notes of the key concepts as they go along. Why is that important? Well, it's important because if I give you an example, in chemistry, for instance, earlier on, you need to know the basics of separating mixtures. But then the advanced part of separating mixtures, like making salts and crude oil, that comes a little bit later. If you've made notes on separating mixtures, when these other things come up, making salts and crude oil, then all you need to do is just kind of quickly go back through your notes, refresh your memory, and then you can then apply that to the others. But if you have not made a revision notes, then you're starting from scratch. Then you're like, oh, I don't know what making salts is about, and so on and so forth. So compiling revision notes is really, really important. It's also important so that you're not one of those students who leave things till April, right? You'll be surprised how many students go, oh, okay, let's wait until April, and now I'm going to start compiling notes a month before the exams in year 11. Not ideal. Revision notes, you can do flashcards, mind maps, plain paper, compile everything in a revision folder, so you can always go back to that. As I said, by compiling your revision notes ahead, it gives you that advantage of being well ahead, organized, and you know the main revision notes that you need to focus on. Okay, on to step 5, and that is to apply. That is all about applying the knowledge. Why applying knowledge? So applying knowledge is about turning what you know into practice. It's theory into practice. Applying knowledge is so important is because it helps you to think about or to know whether do you really understand that information, because I cannot tell you how many students in a class, in tutoring sessions, go, yeah, nod, yeah, frantically writing down, and then the exam paper question comes and it's like, we never went through that question, right? And that's because the exam paper is now testing, do you really know that? You might think passively, yeah, I do, but exam paper makes you go, oh gosh, no, I don't think I really know that, right? So really important for the child to understand, to test, do they really understand the information? And by that, they can identify the gaps in their knowledge. If they identify that, no, I don't really understand it, then it will then help them to develop their understanding. Exam paper questions do that. And importantly, develop exam technique in a way that would help them pick up higher marks. That means exam technique, there's so much. Exam technique is a skill of its own, right? So there's so much. So there is understanding the question. What is the examiner saying to me? How can I break it down? If it's a 6-mark question, how can I break it down so that I can get that 6 mark? How can I get the 4 marks? How am I going to manage my time effectively in exams, stay calm, focused, and confident on exam day? So that application part is really important, as you can see, for many reasons. And one of the things that I love about the apply part is that one of the byproduct is it diminishes anxiety. If you start working in exam paper questions now, today, you're not going to get stressed, or you're less likely to be stressed on exam day because you've just practiced exam paper question so many times. Step 6 is maths and practical skills. So a couple of things here is, in order to jump 3 grades in maths and in science, you need to be good at maths. You need to have good math skills. And actually came across a research that says math skills actually equates to good future in terms of earnings and that kind of things, far past any of the other subjects. So, we tend to have a thing where we don't like maths, but actually if you do well in maths, and this doesn't necessarily mean getting a grade 9 or grade 8, but if you just do that little bit better in maths, so just a 1 grade improvement in maths affects your earnings far more so than the other subjects. And this was the research that I saw from the Department of Education. The second thing with maths is, when you combine maths and scientific investigation skills, in science, they're worth up to 40%, 35 to 40%, 2 to 3 grade levels, okay? So I've just literally given you another good tip there for your child in order to help them improve their grades. It's focusing on those mathematical skills and scientific investigation skills, because the scientific investigation skills have a lot of maths in it, right? And overall, the maths test about this, the science test accounts for 40% of the maths grade. In fact, I was seeing, especially in physics, somebody looked at, I think, one of the papers from last year and said, no, it wasn't 40% at all. It was like a good 50%. So maths is important, especially if you want to do well in science. So if your child is currently in a grade 4 and they want to get grade 7, that's the answer. Focus on those mathematical and scientific investigation skills. And maths is a practice-based subject, so I recommend about 15 to 30 minutes a day. Again, focusing on the parts of the maths that, they're not sure about. The last step that I want to talk about, step 7, that I think can be very much overlooked, is what I call the winning mindset. And I've put this image here because this was I really loved this story when I first heard about it, and it stayed with me for a long time. And it's about the Chinese bamboo tree that takes 5 years to grow, but that groundwork needs to be done every single day for 5 years. It has to be watered and fertilized. And then 5 years later, it grows massively tall. I just love that. I think it's really amazing. It's just so inspiring. So there's a couple of things that I take from that, from a mindset perspective, that I teach my students, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But one thing to know about mindset is that you can have the best revision plan, you can know all the content, but if your child lacks confidence, they panic during exam, or they give up after one bad test, then it's going to cost them. So going back to that bamboo tree, here's what I learned from that I feel that I can extract for students, is to adopt that little and often rule. So if you go back to the bamboo tree, you can see it's just about watering that plant every day, little and often, right? So that consistent effort beats last minute cramming, right? So that little and often means 5 minutes a day. I'm going to do a 5 minutes. I'm going to look at an exam question, paper question, 5-mark question. It's going to take me 5 minutes, and I'm going to do that today. I am going to spend 10 minutes on my homework today. I am going to spend 15 minutes going over this topic today. Doing that rather than waiting till the last minute and then trying to cram everything in is the best way, right? Trying to cram everything is not ideal. So the little and often approach is the number 1 mindset rule that I give my students. And linking with that, again, going to that bamboo tree, is to never, ever give up. So don't be one of those students. If you want to be the best student that you can be, if you want your child to be the best student that they can be, don't be one of those students who moan. And I get it, especially in the maths and sciences, the amount of times I speak to students and they say, we've had this supply teacher and that supply teacher, and this has changed at school and that has changed at school, and a teacher's not there, and so on and so on, and or my teacher can't teach properly, and blah 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 blah. Instead of moaning, what can you do, right? Can you ask your teacher, your tutor? Is there a friend that you find is probably better at a specific topic, or is a little bit higher than you, that you can ask? So really just ask until it all makes sense. I love this quote. I think it's from a poem from some guy that I saw somewhere, and it's, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul. If you want to get your best grades, we're not just talking about a grade 9, but if you're in a grade 2 right now and you want to get a grade 6, you've got to own your own kind of destination. You've got to own your own outcome. So have that mindset, and that will change everything. So yeah, mindset is really what turns students into that top performance, and that consistency and that confidence is really the secret weapon to top grades. All right, so that is absolutely everything for today. I just really wanted to share that with you. It's everything that I have learned in my over a decade of working as a classroom teacher, tutoring students, having worked with over 500 students in the past few years at the Impact Academy. And if you're a parent watching this and you want your child to go from a grade 4 to grade 7, grade 6 to grade 9, it's possible. And this is the absolute roadmap that they need to make that change. If you want to find out about our tutoring programs and how our tutoring programs can help your child get there faster, then I'll put a link in the description down below. All right, that's all for now. Take care. Bye-bye.